So got my workshop all set up. Here's what I bought for my pantry. I don't know if I have enough, probably not. This is gonna be backing for my cabinets and for the bookshelves. And then I bought these 3/4 inches pieces of, it's called sand plywood. It's just a little bit less expensive than birch. I got these all at Home Depot. And then I also got these 1x2 pieces of select pine, and this is what I'm gonna use for my face frame. I'm gonna give you the basics of building a cabinet, bookshelf, whatever. This is what we're doing. So I've cut my very first piece. I want the entire width of my first bookshelf or set of shelves that I'm doing to be 35 inches wide. So I cut this very wide. This is going to be the piece that sits on top of the whole thing. So it's going to go the full length. I want it to be 12 inches deep when all is said and done. So I actually cut it. If I pretend like this is my face frame that I'm gonna put on, this distance right here is now 12 inches. And so I subtracted, this board is 3/4 of an inch wide, so I just subtracted that. This width is 11¼ inch wide. And that's what all of my shelves are going to be, so that I can get them all the exact same width. So now that I've got my top piece cut, I want the whole entire thing to be 53 inches. And since this one is going to sit on the top of my box, I don't want to cut another board that's 53 inches tall, because then it'll be 53 3/4 if I put this on top. So I'm going to subtract another 3/4 of an inch and make it 52 1/4 inch and 11¼ wide. So now that we've got these ripped down how we want them, 11 1/4 inches long, I'm going to be doing a couple of different cuts, because these are going to make up my two sides. So I need 2 of them that are going to be 52 1/4 inches. So I'm going to go to my 52 1/4 inch mark, and then cut 2 of those that way. Right over here on my miter saw. So there's my top, here's my 2 sides. Now I'm going to be putting 2 shelves in here. My first shelf is going to give 12 inches of space for the bottom, because the countertop will be right here. 12 inches, and then I haven't figured out the exact spacing, but I'm going to do 2 shelves. So in order to figure out that length, I already know that this piece is 35 inches, but if I cut my shelves 35 inches, they're going to be too wide, because I have to take into account both of these sides. This is 3/4 inch, this is 3/4 inch. I have to do 35 minus 1½ inch, because it's the 2 sides together, and that's going to be the length of my shelves. Okay, so now I've cut my pieces to 33½ inches. So now that we've got them all cut, it's time to assemble. So first I have to decide, where are my pocket holes going to be? So I need to put these pieces into that one. I'm going to have wall on either side, so I can put my pocket holes on the outside and they won't be seen, but they will be seen if I put them on the inside. So I'm going to drill pocket holes at the ends of each of these so I can join them to that. Okay, so now for my shelves are a little trickier, because you have to decide where they're going to be seen the least. So in my case, I could use pocket holes if I were doing a really low shelf. I could put them on the bottom, or a really high shelf and put them on the top. But since my sides will not be seen, I don't even have to use pocket holes. I can just screw straight in through this board, and that will attach my shelving where I want them to. Start by drilling these pocket holes. Another option, since this is going to be the top shelf and no one's going to see it from the top, I could even drill in, just screw in from the top of this and not do any pocket holes. But I like this method, so we're doing it. So when I come to join these are going to be joined just like this, okay? So I could, whoops, actually they're gonna be like this with my puckles on the outside. So I could just stick a little glue in there and screw them in. However, when you try and screw them in, they're gonna shift a little bit. I want these to be perfectly square and straight. So what I'm going to do is I'm gonna grab my little scrap piece of wood here. This is as thick as this is, okay? It's 3/4 of an inch. I'm just going to put this exactly where I want it and then trace a line. So I know this right here is where I can clamp this board so that when I put this on there and screw it in, it's not gonna shift any farther inside. Okay, so that's on there good and tight. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm going to come in right here. I'm gonna add some glue right here. And now I'm using 1 1/4 inch pocket screws. You don't have to use these, but they make it better. They make it so that just the way that their head is shaped, they stop at the top of the pocket hole, so you don't accidentally screw it too far in and poke out the other side. So I'm going to set this guy right here. Line them up exactly where I want it. Make sure that that's flush. Stick some screws in here. And with these pocket holes, you want to use something with an extra long bit so that you can get down in there. If it's too short, you won't be able to reach it. 1 1/4 inch is what I use pretty standard for 3/4 inch pieces of plywood. Just tighten it up. You don't need to tighten up too much, just until I get a little glue squeeze out is the only thing I look for. Okay, so since I am building a bookshelf, if I were building a set of if I were building, let's say this was a cabinet, it was a little bit deeper than this, I would probably put this down here further with a 4 or 5 or 6, however long inch extra section right here to make way for baseboard to put all the way around. But we're not doing cabinets, we're just doing a bookshelf unit, a shelving unit. So I need to decide, this is going to be sitting on top of a countertop. I want at least 12 inches of clearance before I do the first shelf, but I've also got to take into consideration my overhang, because I'm going to have a face frame on. This is 1.5 inches wide. So if I want the bottom of my face frame to be at 12 inches, then I'm going to have to add on 1.5 inches for the top of my shelf to go. So 12 plus 1.5 is 13.5. So I'm going to measure up 13.5 inches, mark that on both sides, and that's where I'm going to line up the top of my shelf. So here's another thing, is that since I'm screwing in from the side, I'm going to mark this at 13.5 all the way down so that I know exactly where my center line is, so that I don't miss my board. I'm also going to measure, just screw in 1 on each side at the top, flip it over, measure again, and screw it in on the other side so I know that I'm exactly where I want it to be. You can also check for square using a square to make sure it's where you want it before you screw the second one in. When I'm screwing into the side, I'm going to be using my Power Pro screws, because if I were to use these guys, they would stop and I'd have a big bulge right here at the end of each, because that won't go beyond the wood. Instead, I'm going to be using these Power Pro screws that are angled right there, and so they encourage boring down into the wood so that it'll be nice and flat, and so that I don't have any problems bumping it up against the wall. now that that side is in, I can flip it over. Measure 13.5. Now I'm gonna go stick one more screw in the middle of each of these. And then we will have our first shelf, right where we want it. Okay, so now that we've got the 2 shelves in, I'm going to be putting a header board across the top so that we can put crown on it, and then the crown can go on the ceiling. And then also I'm going to be putting backing on. The reason why I want to put backing and not just shove it up against the wall is because not every wall is straight, and so you're likely to have gaps around here that you would then have to caulk. Plus, I have a shiplap backing that I think will make it look really nice. Okay, so this is the stuff I found. I got this from Home Depot. This is just a shiplap. It's like a faux shiplap piece of backing. Okay, this is the progress we made today. So tomorrow I'm gonna get these shelves built on either side. Bam, bam. And then that'll be the end of the structure. And then we'll be able to frame it out and trim it out. And this is gonna look so good.